Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Indie Game Movement, the podcast that talks about the marketing and business of indie games. I'm Andrew Pappas. I'm going to be your host today, and today we're going to be talking about crafting store pages that stand out. You know, making a great game isn't enough if players don't understand why they should care in the first place. So today, we're going to explore some of the many things that are commonly overlooked when setting up Steam store pages, like how to communicate your game's value quickly, visually, and honestly. We're going to break down those common store page mistakes, discuss how players can scan images instead of reading them, and examine how developers can better showcase their game's experience without relying on buzzwords or hype. So that's what we're going to be talking about right here today on Indie Game Movement. Hey everyone, and we're back. And today with us, I have Josh Bycer. Josh, how's it going? And great to have you on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's going great. It's almost the end of the year, Game of the Year award stuff coming out. So I'm in that kind of relaxing and busy stage here for
Yeah,
what I do.
love it. Absolutely love it. Well, folks, for those of you who aren't familiar with Josh, he is the owner and lead editor of Game Wisdom. And I mean, geez, Game Wisdom's been around for like ages, it feels like, right? Since like 2012, I believe.
Yeah, we're still going. We're still that very like underground site. People who know me tend to like me, but it's still very hard to get the word out. So I hope everyone listening gets to check things out and let me know how I'm doing.
Yeah, well, why don't we then take a minute to, share what Game Wisdom is all about? And honestly, I know we're not going to go into the history of how we met, but I will say that before we were introduced to a mutual connection of ours, I knew about you, I think, from about 5 years ago because of Game Wisdom. And yeah, would love for you to share more about it because I think a lot of people can benefit from the work that you do.
Hmm. Well, with Game Wisdom, my whole goal was to kind of expand the discussion on game design when it comes to building a game. I mean, with Game Wisdom, my whole idea was to kind of expand on what it means to make games and game design as a whole. So I've been interviewing game developers since like I started the site in 2012, but it wasn't really until like 2013 was when I just began interviewing everyone I could get a hold of. And that really kind of expanded my own thought process and my own philosophy when it comes to game design. And over the years, I've just built up this background when it comes to being able to discuss, break down, and just analyze games. So I've been playing games from indie developers, first timers, to people in the industry. I've done consulting, written books. Basically, if there's anything about the design or mechanics of a game, I can spend like 3 to 5 hours easily, just like talking about it in my sleep.
Yeah, and I know you've shared a lot of those discussions and topics and everything else on the content you produce. And in fact, one which I've shared with you before too that I remember fondly was you had one I think it was like some podcast or just a recording of yours on YouTube talking about early access and really
Mhm.
what it means to be in early access. And I mean, honestly, that's the one that really stood out to me a lot. But that's just one of many of the things that you share and everything. On Game Wisdom, which again, as I said before, it's a really a great resource for people out there to consider and have, especially that different perspective that you provide, and one that I think is very grounded and meaningful as well.
Thank you.
Of course. Well, I know, and while you're still going on with that and everything else, I know there's like you said, you're still busy, even though you're getting into that that relaxation form of being busy. I'm just curious, like, when you're not doing those types of things, and you are relaxing, what else are you doing kind of in your spare time to unwind or unplug a little bit?
I guess the quote unquote spare time is
Yeah.
the best part. Boy, yeah. I still try to find time to play all the other games I don't cover on the channel. I've been going through Terror from the Void, the Phoenix Point kind of mod slash expansion, which has been a lot of fun and a lot of challenge. I've also decided to play the mod X Pirates, which was like the original, based off the original XCOM from back in like 94, 93.
Yep.
Very not safe for work, but still like an amazing strategy game. And other than that, just still trying to find time to improve my video editing, writing books. Like there's never really any like free time. There's always like something like I keep neglecting that I have to get to it with any time that I have.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And don't remind me myself because I'm in that boat too. Well, no, I appreciate you sharing that. And in light of that, though, we'd like to get to know you a little bit more. And how we do that here, folks, on the show is we have our guests go through the Q Box round. So, Josh, I just have to ask, are you ready for the Q Box round, which is some quick random questions I got prepared for you today?
Yep, I am good.
Awesome. All right. First is, what's the most helpful or impactful advice you ever received?
I think when it comes to like game design or just being able to study games, it's about looking at how everything as a whole is working. Does the game kind of like match, or are there clashing elements? And like that to me has been kind of like almost like the pillar whenever I study a game or talk about it. It's just being able to see, okay, does this feel right, or does it just like feel off to me?
Mm, good one. All right. Next is, what is your childhood favorite game?
Probably the first one that I really managed to go and beat all the way through, which would be Super Mario World. I still remember being so proud of myself when I beat the special extra world for the first time. I got to see like the whole world in like full mode.
Oh yeah, that's yeah, that is a good one. I think I remember. I never had that quite that experience, but I got the residual effect what a friend of mine did, and I went over his house later to play. And so, wow, this looks so cool.
Yeah.
All right, and last but not least, and the staple here on the show, which is, what game are you playing now?
As I said a few minutes ago, will be Terror from the Void from Phoenix Point. That it's finally given me the chance to try and play through that one on top of all the other like tactical strategy games I've been trying to get to.
Nice. And I'm just curious, what's next after that, or do you have anything yet?
Oh boy, I don't. Unfortunately, I don't think I think that far in advance of all the
It's all
with
good.
the backlog of games that I have on Steam, which scares people when I tell them how many games I have on Steam.
Oh, don't worry. You're not the only one. There's a lot of us out there, so all right. Well, awesome. Really appreciate you sharing all that with us. And now, folks, let's get into the conversation. And as I shared earlier in the intro, we're here to talk about crafting store pages that stand out. And, Josh, to kick things off, I'm curious, why do you think, so many well-made games struggle to communicate their value on Steam?
Mhm. I think there's two big reasons. So the first one, for like new developers, especially like students and first timers, this is when we start getting to kind of the marketing of a game. How do you present this to someone? And if you don't have any background in terms of marketing, in terms of PR, or even just in terms of having an art background, this becomes very difficult for you. If you don't know how to draw, you have no idea how to make something looks appealing, how do you make an attractive thumbnail?
Mm,
And then, of course, there's the whole microcosm of trailer design and trying to encapsulate your entire game in under, I think it's about like 80 and 90 seconds.
mhm.
And then the other aspect, and I think I see this from people who get in who are like already established and they go into indie or they're doing it for the first time, is again that kind of a lack in terms of marketing. You can make an amazing game in your head. That doesn't mean you can kind of convey that to someone. And I've seen like store pages from people who have like 5, 10, 15 plus years of a collective experience, and the store page just looks horrible. And I think one of like the biggest things I want to like convey to your listeners is that you cannot look at a AAA game store page and copy that for your own. Like if you look at the store page for Elden Ring, for instance, probably one of the best games of the past decade or last 5, 6 years, the store page for that was like barely anything important on there because it doesn't have to be. Like From Software's name sells all their games. If you're just starting out, you'll have From Software's prestige attached to you. And the same goes for like Hollow Knight or Team Cherry, and pick any like major name out there.
Yeah, I think that's a good point too, because a lot of times when it comes to these things, we look up to, you know, who we admire, who we know is like popular, respected, and has this,
Mm.
a sense of authority. But the reality is that there's a reason for that, and we can often misinterpret what that means, or at least how that can then, at least attempted to be articulated or conveyed in our own way of communication, because they're very very different, as you started to share.
Mhm.
When it comes to attracting players and building like an attractive presence on Steam, I'm curious to explore a little bit more about this, and in particular, like, what elements of a store page would you say tend to do the most heavy lifting when it really comes to grabbing that attention?
Mhm. The first one is definitely the thumbnail. Like for what I've been doing with Game Wisdom, especially like the last 3 years, I've been doing a lot more in terms of studying store pages and especially covering the festival events on Steam. So
Mm.
Next Fest, Little Narracon, Tacticon. There's a lot of cons that happen on Steam
Yes, there are.
every few months. And when I'm looking at that, I am literally looking at hundreds, if not thousands, of thumbnails. I only have the time to go into the store page just on initial reaction.
And when you're saying
So
thumbnails too, you're also is another word you could use to describe this as capsule art too.
yes,
Okay,
hmm
excellent.
yeah, and like the capsule art slash thumbnail for these games, there has to be something that is eye catching, or at least something that is going to give me like that one momentary pause to look at it, where I'm just looking at like seas and seas of thumbnails.
Mm.
And it is just very hard sometimes because if you're talking about like an action game, you can just show your character fighting someone. If it's like a cozy game, you can show people farming or shopping or petting an animal. But we're talking about like a strategy game. How do you make it convey to someone what your strategy game is if it's a top down or isometric? And it's a big struggle for a lot of people. And then the kind of the next step forward is the trailer. The trailer, I would say, goes beyond the store page because it's something that you should be posting on social media. You should be putting it on, if you have a YouTube channel, if you have TikTok, Instagram, like you need people to be able to view this trailer. And that needs to be the best possible showcase for your game. I've seen some developers who they, in lieu of a trailer, they just have like, I actually saw this one. It was just an hour long playthrough of their game. There was no trailer whatsoever on the store page. And I'm just sitting there going, there is no one in their right mind who's going to sit and watch an hour of a game that they have never seen
Yeah.
before to try and convince them to buy this game.
Yeah, no, you make some really good points there too, especially when it comes down to the trailers and even, let's say, like, screenshots.
Mhm,
There's a lot going on here outside of just what you described as, like, essentially forms of marketing, right? We
mhm.
promotion, we have a trailer, we put it out there, great. So I'm naturally curious about this. Like, how would you say, like, how should developers think about things such as screenshots and trailers, as
Mhm,
communication tools and not just marketing assets? Because I think, again, we lean into this idea of their marketing assets when they're really doing more than just marketing.
mhm. I will say for the trailer itself, there are just some like general good practices that you want to do. So the first one is you want to get into what makes your game exciting as quickly as possible. One of the like first, like not exactly a sin, but a no-no for any developers that you don't want to have on the very first thing, this is a game by whoever. Because if you're unknown,
Right.
nobody unfortunately cares about your name.
Like
And,
dropping the
if you're
logos and everything. Yep.
yeah, if you're Team Cherry, if you're Yacht Club Games, yeah, you plaster that logo the very first thing. The trailer needs to be able to communicate to someone why they should play your game and what makes it exciting. There should always be kind of like this needle drop moment in the trailer, showing a big boss, watching the nuke come down if it's a strategy game, even if it's like a puzzle game, showing, every like a match 3 where it's like this ginormous combo. There has to be something that's going to kind of stick in someone's mind when that trailer is over. And also, it's important to note on the trailer, when the game's coming out, what platforms will it be available on? A lot of developers, and I've seen people that I've done like consulting with make this mistake. They'll assume the trailer is only going to be on Steam. So there's no need to post, where the game is, what platforms it's going to be on. But the trailer is part of your marketing, and you should be posting it on social media. And if you're posting it on a YouTube channel or you're just going to show it on Instagram or whatever, people need to know that, hey, I can buy this on Steam or if it's on Switch or PlayStation or whatever. Now, when it comes to the images, one of the biggest things you don't want to do is use pre beta or alpha images for your kind of your reel on Steam. I've seen developers do that. They'll have actually, you can see the different version numbers on each image. So it's like
Mm.
this image is taken from version 0.057. This one's 0.789. You want the images on the store page to be as complete as they can be. This is not the time to be having like placeholder art or temp art in it. This should be the best representation of your game. And if your game develops over like the time, like some developers will immediately, create a store page almost immediately. Some will wait until the game is either out or almost out. Update those images accordingly. If you're at 1.0, you should be using 1.0 build to make those images. And you want to show off a variety of things in those images. Show off, what this game looks like, how, different menus. You need to, again, be able to tell someone through your images what my game is and is it going to work for me.
So those are some good points too, because I know sometimes people, when they're putting images, screenshots on their Steam page, they are sometimes worried about, oh, well, I don't have anything new, or I do have some new stuff and I'll swap it out. What you're ultimately saying is just be consistent with the image. So, hey, if you're in a long dev cycle for whatever reason,
Mm-hmm.
you should when you swap out those images, it should be relatively consistent with the current state of the game. So in a way, it shows progression, because if you're showing something that was done several months ago and then you have another image that's showing now, that shows a level of inconsistency, and then it could probably create some friction or confusion of people that are visiting your Steam page.
Yeah, and if you do update like the GUI of your game, definitely do not have images that show like an older model of it. And also make sure that all your images are the same resolution. I've seen some developers, they'll have this one be 600 by 800, another one would be 1080 by 1200 or whatever that is. And it kind of keeps like shrinking and expanding as you're like going
Mm,
through the reel. Because people want to know that they can trust your game. They
right.
can trust that this is an actual game that's not going to blow up their computer when they run it for the first time.
Yeah, and you use an important word there, trust, because honestly, that's through this form of communication, these visuals and everything else, it is establishing a form of trust.
Mhm.
If people are seeing something that's consistent and regular, and even if it's in the early stages of development, at least you're properly setting those expectations. But if those expectations are kind of like across the board in various like ways and stuff, and there's just this level of inconsistencies, then you're potentially eroding that trust, and therefore could start, causing problems, and when it comes to really trying to attract people the way we want to with our Steam pages.
Mhm.
In light of all this, what would you say are some subtle design or even presentation mistakes you see repeatedly that hurt otherwise solid games? Because I'm sure there's lots of us that have made these mistakes, or you still see these things happening.
Hmm. Yeah. So I guess like from like top to bottom on the store page, again with the thumbnail, if it just looks horrible, if it's just like a collage of like weird images, if the title is unreadable, I've seen thumbnails where they use the font where like every letter looks like it's like on top of each other. There's like you can't even tell what the name of the game is
Oh yeah, yeah.
through the capsule art, which makes it very hard when you're trying to search for that game and people are excited about it. With the trailer, very similar. Text is your enemy when it comes to the trailer. You don't want to be, just pasting text on top of your game footage. If you want to have, custom fonts or have the text kind of overlay nicely over it, that's a different story. But again, you don't want to be in the middle of your trailer, have like a 5 paragraph summary of what's going on, just like on top of that footage. With the about this game and kind of like the images, again, you want to be able to present to someone why they should play your game. And while the trailer should be showing off your game, make sure that it's edited, the footage should be looking nice. For the images and the about this game section, now you want to be actually showing someone what is this game. Make sure to show them the different GUI menus, show them why this game is going to work for them, what it's all about. And I would say one of the most subtle areas where a lot of developers tend to mess up is the kind of like info panel or the about this game section, and like kind of like on the right hand side. So then we see stuff like the developer's name, the publisher, that kind of thing. And make sure to have your tags properly attributed to your game. So every game should have at minimum 3 tags. If it's a single player game, have single. If it's a multiplayer game, have multi. Indie is of course the other obvious one, especially if we're having indie developers listening. And of course, what your genre is. So action, adventure, role playing, shooter, bullet heaven, just whatever can best capitalize or can explain your game. Because this is how Steam's algorithm is going to suggest your game to other people. And I found games just by, hey, I'm looking up a idle game or an incremental or an action game, and it shows games that are similar to it. Now, of course, that's not perfect. I've had stuff where I'm looking up cozy games and suggesting, hey, go play Five Nights at Freddy's or Resident Evil because they're exactly alike. But it's stuff like this that you need to do if you want Steam to kind of present your game or do a little bit of the heavy lifting for you. Because if your store page is not good or there's issues with it, Steam is not going to magically fix that. They're not going to sell your game for you. They can only take what you've done and improve it and share with everyone else.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point too, and it leads into probably a bigger discussion, which we're not gonna probably have time for. What you said about tags is so important, and I think all of us understand the value of tagging our games correctly. But if you look into it from a deeper level, in some way, shape, or form, even though it might not seem it, how we tag our games can also be somewhat subjective. And without like I would say proper research or looking at other games in your space and validating that a little bit to a degree, what can ultimately happen is maybe some misalignment or mistagging, even though it's still representative of it, of the overall experience. And I call out to that because sometimes it's just those little, like you said, those little things could look kind of like put that signal in a different direction, and Steam's not going to be the one to correct it for you or anything else. So it's again, it's a little bit deeper and kind of more about a self-evaluative process. There is really understand and know what it is you're tagging about your game and how that actually relates not just to the experience, but how can you validate or cross-reference with other games in the space too, because if not, it's almost like, if you are have a destination and you want to go to the certain point but you're off a few degrees, that could really change where you end up.
Yep. And don't be afraid to look at, I think you made a really good point there. Don't be afraid to look at other store pages in your respective genre to see how they're marketing the game and what tags they use. Because part of marketing, again, is being able to establish what makes your game stand out, what makes your game part of the genre. If people are excited about this particular adventure game, why are they excited about it? And see how you can convey that with your game. It's not about just, copying someone else's design, but being able to explain, hey, if people really like this game, hey, maybe they'll like my game or something similar in that respective market.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to dig in a little bit here about this idea of like really showcasing a game as opposed to, let's say, selling it. Because I
Mm-hmm.
think sometimes when we get into this mindset of marketing, what we're really doing is we're putting ourselves in a position where we're just really about selling. And to provide some context, what I'm really saying here is, sometimes we get our Steam page up, we're excited about it, we're promoting it, and then we're all what we're gonna do and what we care about is like wishlist my game, wishlist my game, right? That's all we want, and understandably so. So I'm curious, in your experience, what would you say the difference between a store page that explains a game and one that sells the experience?
Mm-hmm. I would say if we're talking about explaining a game, this is when like everything is very cut and dry, where the description is like, this is an action game with 15 levels. It will be 3 to 5 hours long. You can jump, you can swing a sword, and that's it. If we're talking about selling the experience, it's again about conveying to someone what makes this game interesting or unique or original to play. What can you show to someone that, again, is going to stick in their mind and go, wow, I really need to check this one out? If we look at stuff like idle or incremental games as an example, some of these games is just watching a spreadsheet. You're just watching numbers go up for 15 to 100 hours of play, but you can show to someone all the amazing ways you can make those numbers go up. If you have a visual aspect, and this is something I see from a lot of idle design, Cookie Clicker probably being the most famous,
Mm.
where it just goes crazy. All of a sudden, you go from 100 to 10 trillion to 80 quintillion, and the screen is just filling up with every single thing imaginable. You should show that to people. If it's an action game, like part of what we talk about when it comes to marketing is a lot of this translates to social media. If you have a over the top ridiculous gif of your game, 3 seconds of, let's say, oh, here's a good example. There was this game that just shows the character be able to literally parry anything, parry bullets, parry nukes, parry fire. And that person, they put that on social media and it blew up for them. That game was a squirrel with a gun. I remember people just like going, this just makes no damn sense. And those very same GIFs found their way on social media. They found their way onto the store page. And yes, like watching a squirrel take down a grown human being with a gun doesn't exactly go into, complexities about your game, but it doesn't need to. It's a squirrel, John Wick assassin takedown of a full size human. And it's like this kind of like fun stuff, is this kind of excitement that gets people to check this game out. It then lets them go, okay, I really like this. I have friends. Let me share this weird thing or this unusual, amazing store page or this amazing game with everyone else. Because if someone comes away from your store page going, eh, I mean, it's a game. Maybe I'll buy when it's like 95% off. That doesn't really help you. But if they're like looking at your store page and they're, just drooling over being able to play this game, then you've done your job right.
Yeah, and you know what? I think you mentioned this, or not exactly this, but alluded to this. When you're looking at your store page, it really isn't about explaining what your game does. It's
Mhm,
more of the way I like to do it is position it in a way where you're stating, you're answering the question, why should I care?
mhm,
Why should I care about this game? Because if you think about it, just an explanation, like any game can explain what it can do. And if you think about it, it's not really all that fun. But if you can really convince people why they should care about it, and even if they don't, but if you still do an effective job in explaining why, that's good because ultimately that explanation, that showing of why is really acting as a filter too to reach the right audience.
Yep. And being able to again convey to someone, because like we've said, like if we're talking about an action game or something that is very bombastic, yeah, that's very easy to convey. Watch someone swing a sword, do a juggle combo. If we're talking about a puzzle game or an RPG or something that doesn't have that kind of bombastic feel to it, you have to convey to someone why they should check out your RPG. Because if we're talking about like a super min maxy number heavy RPG, the audience for that is not going to care about watching a 10-minute long summon animation. They're going to be there for all that nitty gritty, skill allocation, the Path of Exile infinite perk tree that has no end to it. That's what they want to see. If we're talking about an adventure game, a few seconds of witty dialogue or showing off some amazing pixel animation or any kind of animation that can draw someone into those games. And like I was saying a few minutes ago, just doing your research and being able to say, okay, if people are head over heels over this shooter or this city builder or whatever, how do I use that, or how do I convey a similar feel with my story page or my trailer or images and so on?
That leads in really well to this next question I have too, because with that in mind, how exactly can developers better align their store messaging with what players actually enjoy once they start playing the game? So it's like let's say we have this idea of what they enjoy. How can we align that? How can we incorporate that into our messaging?
Mm-hmm. Again, to the previous point, it's about being able to do research into that genre. Why do people play this?
Mm.
Is it because they like super difficult gameplay? If it's a Tohu or Bullet Hell, do they want an entire screen of multicolored death that just fills every possible spot? There was a game, was it Ceruleum, which is a kind of indie take on the monster collecting, monster kind of breeding RPG. Their whole thing is we just have tons and tons and tons of monsters, and you can collect and breed and manipulate them in all kinds of ways. So, how they market is, do you really like to spend hours designing the perfect character for your RPG? Here you go. Like, here's all the stats, here's all the perks, here's, you know, characters just like one shotting everyone. And it's this kind of research or this kind of display that allows you to market your game and convey this stuff. Because as we were saying, if your trailer just says, this is a puzzle game, we have 90 levels, buy my game. People are like, you'll probably get a few like hardcore puzzle fans who'll be like, well, I like 90 levels and puzzles. Let me buy that. But if you can show someone, okay, this is my puzzle game, these are just some of the wacky or just over the top solutions. You don't have to, again, show someone the final puzzle or the end of your game. Just show them what makes it interesting or stand out. That's going to get them to start thinking and talking about. Baba is You is probably one of the most stand out. Like, it is a very like cerebral puzzle game. You wouldn't think you could really market a game like that, but you can do very creative things in that space. So they show you what some of those creative things are, and it gets people to talk about this game. And if you can have within that trailer, again, like that record stopping or record scratching moment that just completely gets someone interested or excited, that needs to be shown to everyone. You need to get that out to all the social media channels. You need people to look at this and go, oh my God, that's in your game? well, I gotta share this with all my friends and everyone else. And as like, I guess one final point about this question, when you do this right, I've seen developers get picked up by publishers because of it, that they have that amazing moment and social media expands on that. It gets to a publisher or even just to someone who's big in the industry space, and they publish it on their social media, who then publishes it somewhere else. And it can lead to these games just blowing up out of nowhere. Look Outside is probably like this year's take on that. This was a just a simple project that someone decided to do for a game jam, and it's now probably one of the most well received indie RPGs that was released this year.
I love how you called out to these things, and what you described as these like crazy awesome moments. I have labeled myself as like memorable moments, but the
Mhm,
point is that these are captivating moments that when you identify them to that is almost like the ticket. It's not going to answer everything, but
mhm,
when you identify them, and it can be identified through other games and stuff, right? So through research, and if they have something like that and you have something that's similar to that, then that gives you enough insight to maybe those are the moments that I should probably lead with or market with, because I know these other games do something like that, and that seems to be something that people really remember about them, or what drew them in, or grab their attention. Uh,
mhm,
there's lots of different ways to do this, but to your point, it's like once you find that those work, or have gained some traction, and again, that's where like things like social media help. It's like you can't hang your hat entirely on social media, but it
mhm.
can be a good place to validate where people are recognizing some of these moments. And if that's the case, then that gives you, again, it's almost like more of this validation process that can help you build on that momentum or create new momentum or something like that.
Mhm. Yeah. Because again, like no one is going to do your marketing for you. They're not going to make a trailer for you. They're not going to best capture your game in screenshots. It's your job to do all that. And then if you do it right, people will then scream it from the rafters and tell other people about it. And so many developers, I think, tend to like mess up on that. To go back to an earlier point, Steam is not going to save your game. Just putting your game on Steam is never going to be enough, especially today. We were just, as I was saying earlier, about all the infesting that's going on. When it comes to Next Fest, I typically play over 100 games in the span of 2 weeks. I'm trying to look at as much stuff as possible, and if a game doesn't interest me, it gets, put into the trash pile. Like there's no reason to keep playing it.
Hmm.
If someone's annoyed about your game or they're confused about it, they're not going to try and do research into figuring out what makes this game special. They'll go to the other 50 to 100 games being released that day and try and find something else.
Yeah, it's a good point, and friction's real, and yeah, it really is. I know we're coming on time here, but a final question I want to ask too. For those listening today, especially if, well, I don't think it really matters if they're indie dev or not, but if there's one thing that they could improve upon in terms of how they present their game on Steam, what would you suggest they should focus on first? If there's just one key thing, what should that thing be?
I would say, if nothing else, the trailer. Because the trailer, again, is going to pull double or triple duty. You should be posting it on social media. You should be sharing that with other people. Well, the thumbnail and all that other stuff are very important. So much organic marketing or organic kind of growth along these lines is being able to show someone something that's visually interesting. And if you, as I've been again saying a lot in this interview about having that record scratching moment in your trailer, that should be taken out of the trailer and shown everywhere,
Hmm.
because you want people to go, oh, this is amazing. Well, what's in the rest of this 50 seconds or this minute long trailer? Because again, if you can get people talking about that, in a way, the store page doesn't really matter. Like if you have that dynamite trailer, again, we go back, if I said like something like Squirrel the Gun or Look Outside or pick any major indie game that succeeded thanks to their social media or their presence, you can, kind of cut out the rest of the store page because people already know about your game. If your game is already being talked about by Markiplier, PewDiePie, Northern Lion, and maybe by me at some point, if I become big and famous along those lines, the rest of the store page doesn't necessarily matter at that point. But you have to, again, do everything that you can to best present your game. Because sometimes you can have an amazing trailer, but people don't remember it. And they're just trying to find your game. It's, again, about, like, I think part of this is just about doing as many of these best practices as you can to give your game the most possible or the best possible chance at succeeding.
Yeah, I love that a lot because I think what you just stated here really kind of summarize, or at least summarizes my belief when it comes to Steam. It's not that Steam's not important. It's not that it can't help out tremendously, but from what I observed, so many of us put so much emphasis and focus on this one thing where what we don't realize is it's just a part of this whole holistic, approach or thing that we need to do to really get our games out there. So I love how you just described that. It's not to say that it isn't important to be on Steam, but at the same time, if we and this really can be applied to anything. If you just focus so much entirely on this just one thing, but we lose the sight of the bigger picture and how everything else plays a role in it, well, it's probably not going to bear as much fruit as we're hoping to, as well. But I don't know. That's my own take of it. But still, I think it's such an important one because sometimes we just really get caught up in these things.
Yep, and we can even extend this to developers who only focus on design of their game and do nothing else. Like the era of kind of like the hermit game developer, I think it is long past. The people who they just disappear for 7 years, they don't talk about their game, they don't mention it to anyone, and they show up with a game out of nowhere. Well, guess what? No one's going to play your game because no one's ever heard of it. And you have to be able to do a lot, I think, to stand out in the market today, which in a way it's unfortunate because there are so many amazing games that they just disappear. I write a monthly column for another website where I talk about like my favorite hidden gems. And some of these games have 5 reviews. Some of them have 0 reviews on Steam. And while even if someone can mention it, that's oftentimes not enough for that game to just have that resurgence. Because a lot of people, they love that underdog story. They love that, okay, I did all this, and now out of the blue, this miracle happens, and now everyone's playing my game. And, I go from 0 copies sold to 700,000 in like 20 minutes. It doesn't happen, unfortunately. And the cases that it does sometimes happen with, like your Vampire Survivor, Among Us, those are kind of glitches in the system. They are the exception to the rule.
Yep, absolutely. Well, that was such great, insightful stuff, and I know we're coming on time here, but before we go, would love for you to share like some tips, suggestions, or any takeaways really for those listening today based off of our conversation.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess like the 3 tips I came up with for this, like again, the art matters for your game. Not just the thumbnail art, but the images that you use. You have to, again, sell this game to someone visually because it's a video game. Even if it is a number, only numbers on your screen, you have to sell to someone the excitement of watching just, rows and rows of numbers all over the place. The trailer, like we've been saying, the trailer does so much heavy lifting for your marketing, for your social media. Because if you can't sell someone after watching 30 seconds, a minute, 5 seconds of your game, they're not going to care to play it. And there's so many practices that go into good trailer design. Again, we could spend an hour just on that topic alone. I would definitely recommend the trailer maker. His name is Derek Liu.
Yes.
Liu.
Yep.
He has been just one of like the best resources. I interviewed him like 3-4 years ago, and like just anything that he tells you about a trailer, follow that because he will not guide you wrong in that respect. And then again, don't neglect the tags when it comes to that store page. Again, this is the like boring, just like putting numbers into a spreadsheet kind of aspect, but it matters because if Steam doesn't know about your game or know where your game is, they're not going to recommend it. And you can use this as, again, to make sure that people know about your game, and especially if your game's in a festival. If you're in a Bullet Heaven festival or a narrative festival, you better have stuff that's related to those games on your tags because people are going to be searching for all those games during that festival, and you want your game to also be mentioned there.
Great stuff, and really appreciate you distilling all those things for us. Well, Josh, really appreciate you being here. And hey, if people want to connect with you or find out how to get to Game Wisdom and learn more, what are some links? What are ways that people can reach out?
Mm-hmm. Well, my main website is going to be, again, game-wisdom.com. If you search for Game Wisdom, it should also pull up the YouTube channel. I'm on, right now, I'm predominantly on Blue Sky as just GW Bycer. Again, you can send me an email, josh@game-wisdom.com. And if you were interested, I have tons and tons of books that I've written on various design topics. My main series is the Game Design Deep Dive. And yeah, like, again, give me a topic, or if you search for it through Game Wisdom, and there's probably a 2 to 3 hour long rant of mine about it somewhere.
Awesome. Well, really appreciate that, Josh. And folks, seriously, check it out. Like I said, from years ago, or maybe not quite that long, but yeah, long enough. That's where I discovered Josh initially, and the content's great. Highly recommend it. Josh, I can't thank you enough for being here today and talking about this because, look, we know a lot of people focus on this stuff, but it's also important to get these different perspectives, especially when it comes to crafting store pages that matter. So can't thank you again for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Andrew. And if you'd like to have me come back to rant more about game design or anything else, reach out. I'll be love to come back on.
Awesome. Appreciate it.
Hey everyone, thank you for listening to another episode of Indie Game Movement. I'm Andrew Pappas, your host, and the show's producer is Mustafa Price. Show notes for this episode can be found by visiting rengenmarketing.com, the number episode of the show. Rengen Marketing is a consulting marketing company that helps indie devs with their marketing efforts. Whether you need guidance with your game's marketing strategy or could use a free marketing plan template, then please visit www.rengenmarketing.com and take action. A special thanks to Dakota Saw for Season 2's opening theme and Melissa Gellis for the new logo design. And as always, thanks for being such great listeners, and we'll see you next time on Indie Game Movement.